Most conversations about photography today begins with speed, faster workflow, faster results, faster content. When we taught how to produce efficiently, how to optimize, how to move on quickly to the next image. But the artists who shaped how we understand beauty, emotion, and meaning were never in a hurry. When Leonardo da Vinci studied light, he wasn't thinking about finishing a painting. He was thinking about how light wrapped around form, how it dissolves edges, how it reveals intentions. When Sandro Botticelli painted the human body, he wasn't chasing realism alone. He was reaching for grace, the quiet rhythm of a body at rest, the elegance of movements frozen in time. And when Caravaggio introduced deep shadow into his work, it wasn't a dramatic choice for attention, it was belief. The darkness carries narrative that what we cannot fully see often holds the most meaning. Those artists weren't asking how fast they could create. They were asking how deeply they could understand. The way of thinking changed the way I see photography. Because photography at its core is not about capture more, it's about noticing more. And my relationship with photography shifted when I stopped treating it as a content and started treating as a continuation of art history. Another way of asking anxious questions is in a modern medium. Before I go further, I want to properly introduce myself. Hi, my name is Mariana, and I'm a photographer and artist, originally from Brazil, and my work exists somewhere between photography and classical art, I could say. I don't approach photography as a documentation, I approach it as interpretation. I'm deeply interested in how artists think, how they make decisions, how they allow restraint, how they trust silence. Those questions shape everything I do, how I shoot, how I edit, how I decide when and what images to work it on. What I'm sharing with you today doesn't come from trends or formulas. It comes from years of studying images that last and questioning why they last. Renaissance artists understood something we often forget. Art is not about decorating, it's about meaning. Their work explored humanity, and faith, belonging, stillness, contradiction. They weren't creating to be consumed quickly, they were creating to returning to. The mind has changed the way I use light. Renaissance light is not flat, it's directional and intentional. Light enters the frame with purpose. Shadow is not something to raise, it's something to respect. In my photography, I stopped trying to fix darkness. I let it exist because light tells us where to look and shadow tells us where to feel. That balance creates emotional depth. I also stopped to think of people as a subject to pose and started thinking of them as bodies that already knows how to exist. Renaissance painting, you will notice something subtle. The figures are never reached. They lean, they rest, they pause between movements. And when I photograph someone, don't I don't direct them into position. I guide them into stillness. I don't ask for performance, I ask for presence. Because the moment someone stops trying to look right, they begin to feel real. Color taught me another lesson. Renaissance palette were often limited but intentional. earth tones, mute blues, softer reds. Nothing competed for attention. Color was never louder than the emotion it supported. So I learned to ask different questions. Does this color support the story? Does it calm the image or disrupt it? Does it carry meaning or is it simple noises? Restrained it. I learned it is not limitation, it's clarity. We live in a time that reward volume, more images, more posters, more outputs. But Renaissance art reminds me that significance doesn't come from quantity, it comes from attention. Some images are not meant to circulate widely, they are meant to stay quietly with someone. Photography doesn't need to shout to matter, it needs to endure. Studying classical art didn't make me faster, it made me more patient. It taught me to observe longer than I produce, to trust work that unfolds slowly. And that philosophy deeply influences how I edit also. Editing for me is not a technical step, it's a second act of interpretation. It's where I return to the images and ask, what is this really about? Not is not what it should look like, but what is trying to say. Editing taught me that interpretation is where authorship lives. Give same image to 10 different artists and you will receive 10 different truths. Not because one of is right and the other one is wrong, but because editing reveals how someone sees. Their patience, their restraining, their emotional boundaries. That's why I don't believe editing should be taught as a recipe. It should be taught as a way of thinking, a way of asking questions, a way of slowing down long enough to trust on your own eye. If there's one thing that I hope stays with you, is this. Art does not ask for speed, it asks for presence. If you feel disconnected from your work, it's not because you have lost talent. It's because you have been moving too fast to listen. Slow down. Read without sharing. Edit without pressure. Make something that doesn't need an audience. That's often where the most honest work begins. Before we close, I want to ask you directly, clearly, and intentionally. For years, people asked me how I edit, not which tools I use, but how I decide, how I know when to stop, how I choose restraint over intensity, how I translate feeling to form. That question is the reason I created my online editing masterclasses, not to teach a look, not to create replicas of my work, but to teach photographers how to think like an artist when they edit. In the masterclass, I walk through how I approach images in the same way painters once approached their canvas. Studying light, direction, balance in silence and emotional way. It's about developing discernment, taste, confidence in your own decisions. If editing has started to feel automatic, mechanical, or disconnected from your vision, this masterclass exists to slow the process down and give it meaning again. You will find the link in the video description. And before you go, if this conversation resonated with you, I would love you to stay here. You can subscribe to the channel so we can continue having thoughtful conversation about photography, art, and the creative process. If this episode spoke to you, like the video, helps it reach someone who might need to hear this today. And if you feel comfortable, leave it a comment and tell me what kind of art have been influencing you lately. Thank you for being here, for listening deeply, for choosing intention over speed. I will see you in the next one soon. Love you all. Bye.